my work has kind of spilt over into just visual communication and visual art as a whole. I'm really super passionate about preserving the African aesthetic and specifically representing underrepresented communities. So with everything that I do, that's kind of the one thing that leads my thought process and then eventually informs the visuals that I create and then why I create it.
I mainly focus on the themes of African mythology, spirituality, and space, astrology. And my themes kind of interlink with how those themes interlink in between or in being an African. That's the basis of where I am right now in my practice.
I work as a visual artist, mainly specializing in photography. I think because of colonialism, a lot of things were prohibited from us. Like we couldn't actually be photographers the way we are right now. I don't have videos of my childhood. Like I've always had a sense of longing to know how my grandmother looked like when she was 10 years old, you know? And I'll never know that, you know? So I think photography is like my first love and everything else branched from that, yeah.
Love that.
I'm a consumer first before I'm a marketer. And in terms of that, I like to keep my ears to the ground, so really driving relevance for our brand and creating brands with purpose. Our consumers are the ones that help us to grow, and if we're not relevant, we lose out on that. So that's my passion, consumer-driven and purpose-driven marketing.
What does it mean to own your flavor, guys?
Okay, I'll take it. So I think for me and from a brand point of view, when you say own your flavor, I feel like it refers to the ideology of individualism, so owning who you are and being proud about it.
Yeah.
And I think being authentically yourself, owning it and staying true to yourself. And I think that's something that ESPRIT encompasses and really puts forward. And we appreciate those people who stand out from the crowd, who don't conform to society's norms, who challenge traditional roles in society, gender roles, style norms, you know, all these things. So I think owning your flavor really just boils down to owning who you are, being your authentic self, regardless of what anyone else is. That's how I interpret own your flavor.
No, I completely get it. I think when I hear individualism, and then that's when I'm like, yeah, flavor, of course, I get it. You know, because I try accept people for who they are innately. Even if I have my own preferences or own standards, I think it's very important to respect people for who they are without you even knowing who they are, you know? So owning that for me is literally living my individuality, my authentic self, and allowing the same person next to me to do that for themselves.
Yeah.
You know, I think it plays a very big role in how we accept each other as a community, because that's how you build community. That's how you drive community and all these other things that have to do with that.
Being Black women and people of color within our country, we can even see can be dangerous at times. So when you live in a country where it could be dangerous to be your flavor, adds another level of bravery within it. How do you own your flavor if your flavor is something that people deem as very dangerous, or you're put in very compromising situations because of that? Have you guys ever found yourselves in that?
I think it's like trying to own a power that you know you have but you can't express, simply because you know how far that can get you, or how hurt you can be for expressing yourself that way. But if you're compromised, you're compromised. You know, sometimes yes, you can acknowledge someone's power or how powerful a certain part of who you are is, but when you're in a tight spot, you're in a tight spot. And I think it comes from accepting that, you know. That's how you can at least branch out from the discomfort that you're in, is accept that, okay, this is where we are. And as much as you want to fight the compromise and as much as you want to go against it, you first need to get into the first step of it, and it's just, you can't be in denial about it. And because we do live in a country where we are compromised in so many ways, I think a lot of people really need to see the reality of how serious the situation can be, and it is. So then from there, you will know what to do with your power.
Wow, that's so powerful. I think, well, I could agree with that in terms of you can only own your flavor when you understand that you work in a community, you work with other people, and when you accept your individuality and you don't have to impose that on someone else, you accept their individuality. I think if I love myself the way I am, it won't be difficult for me to accept Garabo. If Garabo is very different from me, I will respect that, as Lilama was saying. I will respect her being and who she is.
The more people are encouraged to own their flavor, the more representation they will see, and I think like the more protection they then will be in. Like it's even when I started my career, like being some of the only female street artists that like were outwardly female and being in like very compromising situations. Like you're painting walls, not much protection around you. Already a lot of the graffiti culture isn't very welcoming to females, and especially black females. And we know like violence against women in our country is extremely high. But if we had more people at the time being able to do this, I could go to other female street artists and say like, as a group of 10, let's all go and do this, and like adds that safety and that power in numbers. So that's why I think like owning your flavor is so important, because it increases the numbers, it increases the access that people have, and then eventually will increase the safety net around it, because there's more people and that protection, yeah.
Being African, I think what's always been lacking for me is the process of archiving and documenting things. So I think for me, how I express my Africanness is documenting it, is really just capturing each moment, capturing my mom eating, like, you know, when there's a wedding, just archiving that and keeping that as a form of, as a currency, as a value. You'd remind future generations that they've existed before, because we carry our people, our families.
Wow. That's beautiful.
That's who we are right now. And imagine if we knew who they were. Exactly. And imagine if we wrote books about that and passed it generation to generation. We kept pictures, we kept voice recordings, just that kind of evidence, that documentation, I think for me is the most important thing about being African. And that's how I could say I express that Africanness in the work that I do, yeah.
That's beautiful, yeah, wow. I think for me, how my Africanness informs what I do is realizing how being African in my home, growing up in a really small town, that was something that was supernatural. Like, it's not something that we really thought about, I need to make sure that people see my Africanness. It was just, you're just you. Like, I am Black, I am a woman, and I'm Sotho, and I live in a house with other Black Sotho people. It was just something that this was just how we lived, and everyone around was often Black and Sotho as well. So I never used to think about my Africanness, because I was just like, this is just life. Until like, I was those kids, I grew up in front of the TV. Whenever we were watching The Simpsons, very, very few Black characters, and it was very stereotypical Black characters, and I saw that in a lot of media as well. We had one Black show that we could watch, and it was Martin. And I thought what was really beautiful was just how people in Africa just live every day, and that was something that I didn't see. It's like we always saw like trendy South Africa or trendy Africa. We always saw super exotified if it's like nature-wise, but we just never saw everyday people like living, like just going to work or living with their families. And I just wanted to tell the other side of our narrative is like, we're also everyday people. So I wanted to challenge the idea of what does it mean to be Black? Does it mean that I shouldn't have these tattoos because that's what I'm learning from work and that's what I'm seeing in media? So I'm not seeing a Black woman with tattoos. I'm not seeing that kind of representation. As soon as I was now old enough to go into the world, I realized that at home, my Africanness is something that's like second nature. I never have to think about it, but it's my responsibility when I leave home to think about it and make sure that it's represented in all these spaces where when I was growing up, it wasn't represented.
I'm very curious about where I come from, who I am, my lineage, and because I kind of grew up in different worlds, not like too different, I'm just saying like post-apartheid, you know, pre-apartheid, I kind of like was born in the middle of it and found myself knowing too much about the educated side of my life and not the cultural side. So just grew up to be a curious person, trying to find out about my family tree. I think it stems from being home, because with my parents, we didn't have enough photos to look at, to be like, okay, where were my parents married? Where did my brother do this? How do we do that? So we kind of had to kind of salvage as much information as we could possibly get to kind of find out who we are. And that has happened with a lot of the traditions that happen at home, like how they teach you to, for example, cook. You don't really know how you got to do certain things in an African household, but you find yourself doing them based on how you've probably watched your mother do it. So that kind of like really nonchalant, chilled act of being African is what we don't explore enough in terms of like communicating, like, and documenting it word for word, but just experiencing it and talking about it is quite difficult, I think.
Yeah.
We have so many questions that are unanswered, even in the household. Imagine like on a bigger scale in the world, you know? So I tried to kind of put all of that together, and from there it informed my Africanness, a dual African.
Can I answer that? Well,
You're already on a roll, my friend.
For change to happen, there were people who had to die and who had to burn things to the ground. For us to be here, a lot of people died and sacrificed themselves, or, you know, so I think maybe also you must... Yeah, exactly, that's what I'm saying. Like,
fighters and you have peacekeepers.
Exactly, exactly. It depends on where, as an individual, you see yourself. Because some people see themselves as the sacrifice. That for things to change, I'm gonna put myself down. I'm gonna die for this cause. And others are like, they keep the peace. You understand? They keep harmony. They keep the balance. They protect, which both work. So I think it just goes into where do you fall in? Are you the one that's gonna be like, no, this is who I am, you're gonna accept me the way I am, and if you don't, you know, or like, okay, this is the situation, we can find a strategy to change things. It's still change, it's still progress, it's just different routes, and you know, different situations call for different reactions.
Let's talk about the differences, then come together for the similarity of actually accepting one another, you know? So that plays a very big role for me, and just like, okay, cool, see yourself, but then are you sure that you're seeing the next person exactly? I transitioned from a more creative industry space into the art space, which is a more rigid, more four walls, space that I had to do. So I think the creative industry itself, like the actual creatives, are very supportive of one another from how I have been experiencing them on the ground level. You know, they really like ask questions, what do you do, where can we hang, just to kind of get insight on what they do. But the gatekeepers are a bit more rigid with how the transition of who gets into this level of the game gets that out, you know. So I think it starts with the actual creative to actually create that industry for themselves before the gatekeepers do it for them, you know, because then from there it can become a collaboration between the creative industry and the creators to support and collaborate with the gatekeepers. And it then helps the actual creative economy. I think more than anything, we don't talk much about how the creative economy can be boosted by that same support that we need from the gatekeepers, you know, because what will happen then is that more engagement will come from the companies or the brands or the four walls that we find ourselves in, then we can regurgitate it back into the actual creatives that need it to boost the entire circulation, you know.
I've noticed that in my work, when I touch on topics that talk about Black trauma, because I want healing, you know, for me to heal, I need to acknowledge what's hurting. I think that's what I've embraced, that, okay, there's a sense of rejection, but why are you angry? Talk to me. I'm open to talk. I'm open for us to heal, because if this triggers you, it means this, you know, there's something hurting. Sure. Also within me, I'm talking about this because it's my reality. Yeah. So let's collaborate. Let's talk for us to progress. So I think that's what keeps me grounded and keeps me thinking ahead, in terms of progress, because I want us all to progress, all of us, like everyone, to move to the next level. We need to, but
Yeah, I hear you. I think I can take a lot from that, because in my kind of work and practice, I always try imagine myself outside of the circumstances we've been put in, you know, so which is why I put astrology and science and spirituality into it, because you kind of can't imagine yourself in those spaces because they're still so taboo in our spaces as Africans. So we don't necessarily talk about how we feel about our intimate or internal spirituality, and we don't talk about how we relate to science without the education that has been implicated onto us. So I hear a lot of what you're saying in terms of exploring really who we are at a relaxed place, you know, at a place where we don't have any distractions or even any fight in us, you know, because there is a lot of fight in just literally watching what's happening in front of you, you know. So exploring that and exploring all those things, I found that everything has been interlinked. We just don't know enough about it. We just have to find out how the basics of these cultures or these knowledges have been passed down from A to B. So if individuality is part of that, I think with me it's going back to basics, starting from 1 + 1, literally, you know, and then figuring it out from where I am right now. I think that will help that thing that you're trying to cover, that the healing.
I think platforms like AFROPUNK are amazing. So giving people the opportunity to voice their opinions and own their style and own everything about them.
And safe spaces to do
exactly.
as well.
And I think there's brands that are welcoming of it, and it's just it's a catalyst for change. And yes, as we go along, I think things are changing. And to have these platforms, I think, and voicing our concerns and our opinions, I think it will help to change things in the future as well.
We have to all create this industry together. So I don't know, maybe I'm being vague, you know, I'm not going into the details, but I feel it's a whole collaborative process. We can't keep the same people at the top and leave new voices at the bottom, because when you let in someone new, you're giving them an opportunity to let someone else in. They can take someone under their wing, and it creates a ripple effect with so many people.
From a brand perspective, I think the creative industry has come or made some progress over the years. We've been starting to see a lot of emerging Black creatives, which is amazing. It's also acknowledging the up-and-coming talent. It's not about just jumping in with the established guys. And I think as a brand, as ESPRIT, it's what we believe in as well. So, you know, collaborating and doing these sort of projects with up-and-coming talent is amazing, just to get them out there and get them known. And I think from an authenticity point of view as well, it's to grow your brand, but it's also at the same time growing local talent, which is amazing. South Africa has such great talent. It's present on a global scale. There's always room for more. Now that they've springboarded, let's be the springboard for the up-and-coming talent. And I think that's what brands like ESPRIT are about, and just making that happen. So,
and more women's names in there.
Definitely more women's names in there, yes.
So I think just keeping the same people in does nothing for us. It creates no growth.
The creative industry in South Africa has definitely grown, and it feels like we are able to get our foot in there a little bit more, but definitely we need to have the door swing wide open. And something that I really would love to see, because it's something that I struggled with myself, the gap between getting from university into emerging creative into established creative, that needs to decrease. I think as many South Africans, you don't have enough resources to take you into emerging creative. That could be 3 years. If you're from a home where your parents are depending on you, you can't have 3 years of pretty much emerging, being paid as emerging. So I think that gap is something that we need to shorten somehow. I definitely don't know what the one answer is to do that. And I think it's layered. It's a lot of answers to get us there, and it's a lot of creatives to get us there. And I've seen too many creatives give up before they get to emerging, or even from emerging to established, giving up because they don't have enough resources to carry them to the place that they want to be. So I know for myself, many times I was almost like, It was fine. I tried, but clearly it's taking too long, and like having family that depends on you, it's just going to be impossible. So I think a lot of people are in the same position, and we need to somehow make that gap a lot shorter.
The creative industry itself, like the actual creatives, are very supportive of one another from how I have been experiencing them.
It took my parents long to accept that this is what I do and this is what I want to do forever. For them, it's like, no, she'll grow out of it. It's a phase, oh, what, yeah. And it's like, no, this is what I do. This is my profession. But I wanted to get to a point where parents can be like, oh, you want to be creative? Oh, wow, that's a good career. You know, people can be encouraged. You don't have to seek for validation and always try to explain yourself. So, yeah.
And I think representation is important because our parents are able to see, let's see, Azania did it, killed it. So, of course, you can do the same. Yeah.
Representation.
Yeah. Cheers, everyone.